The coffee had grown cold hours ago, but Alex Reed kept sipping it anyway. He watched the sunrise paint New Eden's sky in shades of purple and gold through the observation deck's massive windows. 3 years of living on this world, and he still couldn't get used to the twin suns. Back on Earth, sunrise meant hope. Here, it just meant another day of keeping 12,000 colonists alive on the galaxy's edge. His communicator buzzed. "Sir, we're getting some weird readings from the deep space sensors," reported his second-in-command, Lieutenant Hayes. Her voice carried an edge Alex had learned to recognize after 5 years of working together. "Weird how?" Alex asked, setting down his cup and moving toward the command center. "Multiple contacts, big ones. They're not broadcasting any identification codes, and they're coming in fast." Alex felt his stomach drop. New Eden was humanity's farthest colony, sitting in what the Galactic Coalition called neutral space. For the past 50 years, humans had been careful to follow every rule, respect every boundary, and avoid any conflict with the 12 ancient species that ran the galaxy. They had built their colonies quietly, traded fairly, and asked for nothing, except the right to exist. The command center buzzed with activity as Alex entered. Officers hunched over displays showing dozens of red dots moving toward their system. The numbers kept climbing. 50 ships, 70, 100. "Have we tried hailing them?" Alex asked. "Yes, sir." No response. "They're jamming our long-range communications, too. We can't even warn Earth." Alex stared at the tactical display. His mind raced through possibilities. Pirates didn't travel in groups this large. Traders didn't jam communications. This was a military formation, and it was headed straight for New Eden. "How long until they reach us?" 6 hours, sir." Alex closed his eyes for a moment. New Eden had a small defense fleet, 6 patrol ships and 1 outdated cruiser. They were designed to handle smugglers and asteroid pirates, not whatever was coming toward them. "Send a message to all civilian ships in the system. Tell them to begin emergency evacuation procedures. Any ship that can carry people should head for the outer jump points immediately." "Sir, what about the mining stations, the orbital platforms?" "Everything, everyone, get them out of here." The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Cargo ships became passenger transports. Luxury yachts carried families instead of tourists. Even the old survey vessel that hadn't flown in 2 years was pressed into service. Alex watched the evacuation from his command ship, a converted merchant vessel called the Freedom's Edge. When the alien fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace, Alex understood why they hadn't bothered to identify themselves. The ships were massive, sleek predators that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls bore the symbols of not 1 but 4 different coalition species working together. "Sir, incoming transmission," Hayes reported. "It's a wide broadcast to the entire system." A hologram appeared in the center of the command center. The figure was tall and insectoid with multiple arms and compound eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. Alex recognized the species from the diplomatic files. This was a Hive commander, one of the Coalition's most feared military leaders. "Humans of New Eden," the alien spoke in perfect English, though its voice buzzed with an unsettling harmonic. "By order of the Galactic Coalition Council, your species has been judged a threat to galactic stability. Your rapid expansion and technological adaptation pose an unacceptable risk to the established order. You have 30 minutes to surrender all military vessels and prepare for planetary occupation." The transmission ended. Alex stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. 30 minutes. No negotiation. No explanation beyond humanity being too successful for their own good. "Sir, what are your orders?" Hayes asked quietly. Alex looked around the command center at the faces of his crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy to build something new. They had families on the evacuation ships, children who deserved a chance to grow up free. "We buy them time," Alex said. "Every minute we hold these bastards here is another minute for our people to get away." The defense fleet moved to intercept the coalition forces. Alex knew it was hopeless. 7 human ships against more than 100 alien warships. But hope wasn't the point anymore. Time was. The battle lasted 18 minutes. The coalition weapons tore through human shields like they weren't there. Their ships moved with precision that spoke of centuries of warfare experience. But the humans fought with something the aliens didn't expect. Desperation mixed with clever thinking. Lieutenant Hayes had an idea that bought them precious extra minutes. She used the Freedom's Edge as bait, leading a squadron of alien ships into the asteroid field where the mining stations used to operate. The humans knew every rock in that field. The aliens didn't. 3 coalition ships died in the resulting collision, and the others had to slow down to navigate safely. But eventually, the numbers told the story. One by one, the human ships fell silent. Alex found himself alone on the Freedom's Edge, watching the coalition fleet reform and head toward New Eden itself. His ship was dying around him. The engines were offline, life support was failing, and the hull had more holes than a piece of Swiss cheese. But the communications array still worked, and Alex had one last job to do. He activated the emergency beacon and began recording. This is Alex Reed, commander of the New Eden Defense Fleet. If anyone receives this message, know that the Galactic Coalition has declared war on humanity without cause or warning. They have superior numbers and technology, but they made one mistake. They let some of us escape. The ship shuddered as Coalition fighters strafed his position. Alex kept talking. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them that we died buying time for 12,000 people to reach safety. Tell them that the Coalition thinks they can wipe out humanity like we're some kind of pest. But they don't understand us. They don't know that we've never backed down from a fight we believed in. Through the cracked view screen, Alex could see New Eden burning. The Coalition ships were targeting everything. Cities, farms, even the forests where children used to play. This wasn't conquest. This was extermination. The galaxy started this war, Alex continued, his voice growing stronger despite his failing ship. They wanted to destroy us because we dared to dream of something better. But they're about to learn something about humans that they should have studied before they pulled the trigger. An alien warship turned toward his position, charging weapons. For a final shot, we don't stay down when someone knocks us down. We get back up and we hit back twice as hard. The transmission ended in a burst of static and flame. But the beacon kept broadcasting, carrying Alex Reed's final message toward Earth and the surviving human colonies. The Coalition had won the first battle, but they had also done something that would prove to be their greatest mistake. They had given humanity a reason to unite in anger. The funeral was small, quiet, and completely illegal. In the basement of an abandoned factory on Mars, 37 people gathered around a simple metal box that contained the personal effects of the crew from New Eden. Real funerals were forbidden, now. The Galactic Coalition had made that clear in their long list of new rules for conquered humanity. Kate Foster watched the faces around her in the dim light. These weren't soldiers anymore, at least not officially. The Coalition had disbanded all human military forces 6 months ago. But Kate saw something in their eyes that made her think the aliens had made a serious mistake. These people weren't defeated. They were angry. Alex Reed died so 12,000 people could live, she said, her voice carrying in the small space. The Coalition thinks that makes him a failure. They think fear will keep the rest of us in line. They're wrong. Someone in the back shifted nervously. Fear was a reasonable response. The Coalition had made examples of several human colonies that resisted their occupation. Entire cities had been bombed into glass to prove their point. I know what you're thinking, Kate continued. We can't fight them. They have better ships, better weapons, better everything. And you're right. We can't fight them the way they expect us to fight. She activated a small holographic projector. Images appeared in the air above the metal box. Supply routes, garrison deployments, resource shipments. But we can fight them, the way they'll never see coming. Tom Walsh had been a civil engineer before the occupation. His job was building bridges and planning water systems. Now he spent his nights in the maintenance tunnels beneath New Angeles, learning how to make things fall down instead of stay up. The coalition soldiers who patrolled the streets above never looked down. Why would they? Humans were beaten, broken, under control. They had no idea that Tom and 50 others like him moved through the city's underground like ghosts, mapping every tunnel, every power line, every vulnerable point in the occupation. Infrastructure. "The transport leaves the depot at midnight," whispered Anna, one of his team members. She worked in the Coalition supply office during the day, filing reports and managing inventory. At night, she fed information to the resistance. Tom nodded, checking his tools one more time. The Coalition used automated supply convoys to move equipment between their bases. The vehicles were heavily armored and well defended, impossible to attack directly, but they all used the same central highway. And that highway passed over a bridge that Tom had helped design 5 years ago. He knew exactly where to place the charges. The explosion lit up the night sky over New Angeles. By the time Coalition security arrived, the bridge was gone, and 3 supply vehicles were burning in the river below. Tom and his team were already back in the tunnels, planning their next target. The Coalition response was swift and brutal. They rounded up 200 random humans and executed them in the city square. The message was clear: resistance would be met with collective punishment. But something unexpected happened. Instead of crushing the resistance, the executions made it grow. People who had been trying to live quietly under occupation suddenly decided they had nothing left to lose. Tom's network of 50 became a network of 500 almost overnight. In a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of Geneva, Maya Patel worked by candlelight on technologies that weren't supposed to exist. The Coalition had banned all human research and development, claiming that uncontrolled technological advancement was what made humanity dangerous in the first place. They had no idea that Maya and dozens of other scientists were using that same technological curiosity to turn Coalition equipment against them. "Look at this," Maya said to her assistant, holding up a piece of alien circuitry. "They've been using the same basic design for 3,000 years. No improvements, no variations. It's perfect according to their standards. So what's wrong with it?" Maya smiled, the expression grim but satisfied. "Nothing's wrong with it, but perfection means predictability, and predictable means hackable." She connected the alien device to a jury-rigged human computer. Code scrolled across the screen as the human system probed the alien circuitry, looking for weaknesses that the original designers had never considered. "They build everything to last forever and never change," Maya continued. "We build everything to adapt and improve. Their strength is our opportunity." Within weeks, Maya's modifications were spreading through the underground network. Coalition surveillance drones suddenly started reporting false information. Security systems began opening doors for humans instead of keeping them out. Even the translation software that allowed Coalition species to communicate with each other started developing mysterious glitches. The aliens noticed, of course, but they couldn't understand what was happening. Their technology had worked perfectly for millennia. The idea that a primitive species could improve upon their designs was literally incomprehensible to them. Admiral Kate Foster stood in the cargo bay of an old freighter, watching as boxes of supplies were loaded aboard: food, medicine, weapons, and most importantly, information. Everything the growing resistance needed to survive and expand. "The shipment for Titan is ready," reported Captain Miller, the freighter's commander. "Same for the Europa and Ganymede. Runs." Kate nodded. The Coalition thought they controlled space around Earth and the inner colonies. They were right, as far as official traffic went. But they had no idea about the network of smugglers, refugees, and resistance fighters that moved freely through the outer system using routes that didn't appear on any official chart. "What's the word from the outer colonies?" Kate asked. Vega Colony is ready to go active. Same with the settlements in the Ross system. They're just waiting for the signal. Kate smiled. The Coalition had made another mistake when they decided to leave the outer human colonies alone. They were too small and remote to be worth occupying, according to alien strategic thinking. What the aliens didn't understand was that those small, remote colonies were exactly the kind of places where stubborn, independent humans went when they wanted to be left alone. And now those stubborn, independent humans were very, very angry. "Tell them to be patient," Kate said. "We're not ready for open war yet. But soon." She walked to the observation window and looked out at Earth. Her home world looked peaceful from this distance, its blue oceans and white clouds unchanged by the occupation. But Kate knew better. Down there, in hidden basements and forgotten tunnels, in the hearts and minds of 7 billion humans, a fire was growing. The Coalition had conquered humanity with overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had crushed human military resistance in a matter of weeks and imposed their will on dozens of worlds. By their standards, the war was over. They had no idea that they had only won the first round of a fight that was about to become very different from anything they had ever faced before. They had never fought an enemy that refused to stay defeated, that learned from every loss, that grew stronger through adversity. They had never fought humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. In the depths of space, refugee ships that were supposed to be fleeing the solar system changed course instead. Hidden shipyards that shouldn't exist began constructing vessels that didn't appear on any official design. And in the darkness between the stars, humanity began to plan for the day when they would remind the galaxy of a simple truth. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive. And when survival was at stake, they could become something that even they didn't recognize. The underground war was about to become something much more dangerous. Ben Harper looked at his reflection in the medical bay mirror and barely recognized himself. The surgery had taken 8 hours, transforming his human features into something that could pass for one of the lizard-like Drac species. Scales covered. His skin, his eyes had been modified to see in different light spectrums, and his internal organs had been rearranged to match Drac biology. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Rivers, the woman who had performed the modifications. Ben flexed his new claws and tested his extended jaw. "Like a monster," he said, though his voice now carried the hissing accent of the Drac language. "Good," Rivers replied, "because that's exactly what the Coalition deserves." The Phantom Core had been Kate Foster's idea. If humanity couldn't beat the Coalition with superior technology, they would beat them with superior adaptability. Humans were the only species in the galaxy that could modify themselves to look like other species. The ancient races considered such changes unnatural, even disgusting. Their bodies were perfect as they were, unchanged for thousands of years. That prejudice was about to become their weakness. Ben's mission was simple in concept, but deadly in execution. He would infiltrate the Coalition command station at Rigel Prime, gather intelligence on their fleet deployments, and, if possible, sabotage their communications network. To do this, he would have to convince dozens of Drac soldiers and officers that he belonged among them. The transport ship dropped him off at a supply depot on the edge of Drac space. Ben's forged identification marked him as a junior communications officer being transferred to Rigel Prime for routine duty. His service record showed years of boring, competent work on minor stations throughout Drac territory. Officer Sectar, "Reporting for transfer to Rigel Prime," Ben told the depot commander, using the name his false identity provided. The Drac commander barely looked up from his paperwork. "Transport leaves in 2 hours. Don't be late." Ben had spent months learning, not just the Drac language, but their entire culture. The way they moved, the way they thought, the way they viewed the universe. Drac society was built on rigid hierarchy and absolute obedience to authority. Individual initiative was discouraged. Questioning orders was unthinkable. In other words, they were the perfect species for a human to impersonate. The journey to Rigel Prime took 3 days. Ben spent the time observing his fellow passengers, fine-tuning his disguise and gathering information. The Drac soldiers were returning from occupation duty on human worlds, and they were full of complaints. "The humans are still causing problems," grumbled one sergeant. "Sabotage, theft, work slowdowns. Command says it's just random criminal activity, but it feels coordinated." "Impossible," replied another soldier. "Humans are too primitive to organize effective resistance. Their military was destroyed months ago." Ben filed that information away while nodding in agreement. The coalition still didn't understand what they were facing. They saw the resistance activities as separate incidents instead of parts of a larger plan. Rigel Prime was a fortress station the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and shields. It served as the coalition's primary command center for human space, coordinating the occupation of dozens of worlds. Ben's assignment placed him in the communications department, exactly where he needed to be. His supervisor was an older Drac named Kolvosh, who had been managing communications for 20 years. "Your job is simple," Kolvosh explained. "Monitor the channels, file the reports, never ask questions about what you see or hear." "Of course, sir," Ben replied. "I understand the importance of discretion." For 2 weeks, Ben performed his duties perfectly. He was exactly what Drac society expected: obedient, competent, and completely unremarkable. He filed reports on supply shipments, personnel transfers, and routine patrol schedules. He also memorized fleet positions, troop deployments, and security codes. Most importantly, he learned that the coalition's confidence was their greatest vulnerability. They didn't encrypt their most sensitive communications because they couldn't imagine anyone being able to intercept them. They didn't vary their patrol routes because their ships were too powerful to face any realistic threat. They didn't even bother with serious security protocols because no enemy had ever successfully infiltrated their facilities. Ben's opportunity came during a shift change. For exactly 17 minutes, the communications center would be unmanned, except for him. 17 minutes to download decades of coalition strategic data and plant a virus that would spread through their entire network. He worked quickly and efficiently, using techniques Maya Patel's team had developed for hacking coalition systems. The aliens' computers were powerful but predictable, built on technologies that hadn't changed in millennia. Human innovation met alien stagnation, and innovation won. The virus was designed to be subtle. Instead of destroying systems outright, it would introduce small errors into communications. Fleet positions would be slightly wrong, supply schedules would have minor delays. Navigation data would be imperceptibly inaccurate. Individually, these errors would seem like normal equipment glitches. Together, they would create chaos throughout the coalition's command structure. Ben finished uploading the virus with 3 minutes to spare. He wiped the access logs, returned to his normal duties, and waited. Within hours, coalition officers were complaining about computer problems. Within days, supply convoys were arriving at the wrong locations. Within weeks, the entire occupation force was dealing with a cascade of small but critical failures. The best part was that the coalition couldn't figure out what was wrong. Their technicians found no evidence of sabotage. Their security systems showed no unauthorized access. The problems seemed to be random equipment failures, the kind of thing that happened when technology got old. But Ben knew better. He had given humanity something they desperately needed: the coalition's complete order of battle, their strategic plans, and their communication codes. More importantly, he had proven that humans could strike at the heart of coalition power without them even knowing it was happening. As his mission neared its end, Ben prepared for extraction. A human ship disguised as a Drac merchant vessel would pick him up during his next leave period. But first, he had one more task to complete. In the station's main computer core, protected by layers of security that assumed no unauthorized person could possibly reach it, Ben planted one final surprise. This wasn't a virus or a hack. It was a simple message, programmed to appear on every screen in the station simultaneously at a predetermined time. 3 months later, as coalition forces struggled with increasing equipment failures and mysterious intelligence leaks, every display on Rigel Prime suddenly showed the same words. The humans you thought you destroyed are still here. We are in your stations, in your fleets, in your homes. We look like you, we talk like you, we live among you. But we remember what you did to our worlds, and we will never forget. This is only the beginning. Humanity remembers. Humanity adapts. Humanity survives. The message appeared for exactly 60 seconds before disappearing, leaving no trace in the computer systems. But its impact was immediate and devastating. If humans could infiltrate Rigel Prime, they could infiltrate anywhere. If they could hack the Coalition's most secure systems, no information was safe. Fear began to spread through Coalition ranks. Every alien soldier began to wonder if their comrades were really who they appeared to be. Every officer questioned whether their orders were being compromised. Every scientist worried that their research was being stolen. The Coalition had started the war with overwhelming technological superiority. But they were about to learn that technology meant nothing when you couldn't trust your own people. They were about to discover that in a galaxy where anyone could be the enemy, paranoia was more dangerous than any weapon. Ben Harper returned to human space as a hero, but he barely felt human anymore. The modifications had changed more than just his appearance. He thought differently now, moved differently, even dreamed differently. But when Kate Foster debriefed him on his mission, Ben's smile was purely human. "They have no idea what's coming," he reported, "and by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late." The hybrid war had begun, and humanity was winning battles the enemy didn't even know they were fighting. The refugee camp stretched across 3 valleys on the frozen moon of Cathera, home to nearly 500,000 beings that the Galactic Coalition had decided were surplus to requirements. Lisa Hayes walked between the makeshift shelters, watching. Children play games in languages she didn't recognize while their parents worked to repair equipment with whatever materials they could find. These weren't humans. The Coalition had driven these people from their worlds long before they ever heard of humanity. But they shared something with humans now. They had lost everything to alien arrogance and bureaucratic cruelty. "Commander Hayes," called a voice from behind her. She turned to see Nix, one of the Void Runners who had made first contact with her ship 3 months ago. His people were nomads, living in converted ships that moved constantly through the outer rim to avoid Coalition patrols. "Just Lisa," she corrected him for the 100th time. "What's the status on the medical supplies?" "Distributed to all sectors. Your people's medicine works better than anything we've had access to in decades. The children's fever epidemic is already breaking." Lisa nodded, though part of her wondered what Earth would think if they knew she was giving away precious medical supplies to aliens. But these weren't the aliens who had burned New Eden. These were the aliens the Coalition stepped on to maintain their power. "Nix, I need to ask you something. Your people know this region of space better than anyone. If we were to coordinate our resistance activities, pool our resources and intelligence, could we actually hurt the Coalition?" The Void Runner's expression was hard to read. His species had evolved in the depths of space, and their faces didn't show emotion the way human faces did. But Lisa had learned to recognize the subtle signs of surprise in his posture. "You're serious about this alliance," he said. It wasn't a question. Dead serious. "Humanity is fighting for survival, but we can't win alone. The Coalition has 12 member species, billions of soldiers, thousands of worlds. But they also have enemies, people they've oppressed, displaced, eliminated. If we could unite those enemies..." "You would have an army," Nix finished. But armies require trust, and trust requires proof that you're different from the coalition. Lisa understood. The Void Runners had been approached by other species before, offered partnerships that turned into exploitation once the stronger species got what they wanted. Everyone in the galaxy seemed to follow the same pattern. Conquer, control, consume. What kind of proof? Lisa asked. Nix gestured toward the refugee camp. Your people brought food and medicine without asking for anything in return. You shared technology without demanding exclusive access. You fight alongside us instead of ordering us to fight for you. But the real test will come when you have power. Will humans become another coalition? Or will you remember what it felt like to be the ones getting stepped on? Lisa didn't have an answer for that. She hoped humanity would stay true to its values, but power changed people. History was full of liberation movements that became the next generation of oppressors. I guess we'll find out together, she said. The alliance began, small. The Void Runners shared their knowledge of coalition patrol routes and supply lines. Humanity provided advanced medical technology and communication equipment. Together, they planned raids that hit targets neither group could have reached alone. The first joint operation was an attack on a coalition prison transport carrying political dissidents from 6 different species. The human ships provided firepower and electronic warfare capabilities. The Void Runner vessels used their superior speed and stealth systems to get close to the target. The prisoners were freed and the transport was destroyed. But more importantly, the attack sent a message to oppressed species throughout the galaxy. Resistance was possible. Word spread through the underground networks that connected the galaxy's forgotten peoples. Species that had been hiding in the outer rim for centuries began making contact. The insectoid Chirari offered their expertise in engineering and construction. The aquatic depths brought their knowledge of underwater mining and hidden bases. The energy beings called the Flickers provided intelligence-gathering capabilities that the Coalition couldn't even detect. Mark Stone had been a logistics officer before the war, the kind of person who made sure supplies got where they needed to go on time. Now he found himself commanding the largest multi-species fleet ever assembled outside of Coalition control. Status report, he requested as he walked into the command center of the converted asteroid base that served as Liberation Front headquarters. Chirari engineering teams have completed upgrades to the Vega colony defenses, reported his aide, a young human named David who had learned to speak 7 alien languages in the past 6 months. The depths have identified 3 underwater Coalition bases that we didn't know about, and the Flickers intercepted Coalition communications indicating they're planning a major offensive against the Outer Rim colonies. Mark studied the tactical displays showing friendly and enemy positions throughout human space and beyond. 6 months ago, humanity had been hiding in tunnels and abandoned stations, reduced to sabotage and hit-and-run attacks. Now they were commanding fleets, coordinating with dozens of species, and planning operations on a galactic scale. What about our infiltration assets? Mark asked. Ben Harper's team has successfully placed operatives in Coalition facilities on 17 worlds. The hybrid program is exceeding all expectations. Most Coalition species are so convinced of their own superiority that they can't imagine other species could successfully impersonate them. Mark nodded. The psychological warfare aspect of the hybrid program was proving almost as valuable as the intelligence it gathered. Coalition forces were becoming paranoid, suspicious of their own people, wasting resources on internal security instead of fighting the war. And the new weapon systems? Dr. Patel's reverse engineering project has produced designs for plasma, cannons that outrange Coalition weapons by 30%. The Chirari have improved the efficiency by another 15%. First production units should be ready for field testing next week. Mark smiled. This was what the Coalition hadn't expected. They assumed each species would contribute their traditional strengths and nothing more. They couldn't imagine that different species working together might create something entirely new, something better than what any of them could build alone. Chapter Liberation of Kepler Station proved that the Alliance was more than just a collection of angry refugees. The station was a coalition research facility where scientists from all 12 member species worked on weapons designed to exterminate problem populations more efficiently. The coalition considered it impregnable, protected by overlapping shield networks, and defended by their most advanced warships. The attack came from 5 different directions simultaneously. Human ships equipped with Chirari-enhanced weapons hammered the station's shields, while Void Runner vessels slipped past the defenses using flicker-provided stealth technology. Depths, commandos infiltrated the underwater sections of the station, while human hybrids disabled security systems from within. But the real surprise came when the station's own automated defenses turned against the coalition forces. Maya Patel's computer viruses had evolved, spreading through connected systems and learning to adapt to new security measures. The station's AI began treating coalition ships as hostile targets while identifying Liberation Front vessels as friendlies. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, Kepler Station was under Liberation Front control. Its research data had been captured, and its weapons turned against coalition positions throughout the sector. More importantly, the victory proved that the coalition could be beaten in open battle by forces they had dismissed as insignificant. The coalition's response was swift and predictable. They launched a massive counteroffensive, sending fleets to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. But they made the same mistake they had been making since the war began. They assumed their enemies would fight by the old rules. Mark Stone's fleet didn't meet the coalition forces head-on. Instead, they scattered into small groups that struck at supply lines, communication hubs, and isolated patrol units. Every time coalition commanders thought they had pinned down the enemy fleet, they found themselves fighting empty space while their rear bases came under attack. The Void Runners used their knowledge of hidden routes to move supplies and reinforcements through areas the coalition thought they controlled. The depths provided underwater bases that couldn't be detected by conventional sensors. The Flickers gathered intelligence on coalition movements before the orders were even transmitted to their ships. But the greatest advantage was something none of the Alliance species had expected. The coalition members were starting to turn on each other. Centuries of barely contained rivalry and mutual suspicion were coming to the surface under the pressure of military defeats. Drac commanders blamed Hive intelligence failures. Hive leaders accused the crystalline shards of providing inadequate technology. Everyone questioned everyone else's loyalty and competence. "They're doing our job for us," observed David during one of the daily briefings. Coalition High Command spent more time arguing with each other last week than they did planning military operations. Mark studied the intelligence reports showing coalition forces being redeployed away from critical positions to protect the home worlds of individual member species. Fear was making them selfish, and selfishness was making them weak. "Send a message to all Liberation Front commanders," Mark ordered. "Begin Phase 3 operations. It's time to take the war to their territory." The tide of the war was turning, and even the coalition was beginning to realize it. They had started the conflict to eliminate a threat to their ancient order. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a united galaxy fighting for freedom instead of domination. Humanity had learned to adapt, as they always did, but this time, they weren't adapting alone. Rachel Cross had never wanted to be president of anything, let alone what remained of humanity. But when the Liberation Front offered her the position of leader for the final push toward Hegemony Prime, she couldn't refuse. Someone had to speak for humanity when the galaxy's future was decided. She stood in the observation deck of the massive ship called Unity, watching the largest fleet in galactic history assemble around her. Human vessels flew alongside Void Runner. Scouts, Chirari engineering ships, depth submarines converted for space combat, and dozens of other species that had joined the Alliance. Nearly 3 million beings from over 40 different worlds, all united by a common enemy and a shared dream of freedom. Final fleet count is in, reported Admiral Kate Foster, who had become Rachel's military advisor and closest friend during the Long War. 1,800 combat vessels, 500 support ships, and more volunteers than we have room for. Rachel nodded, though the numbers still seemed impossible. 2 years ago, humanity had been hiding in tunnels and abandoned stations. Now, they commanded a fleet that dwarfed anything the Coalition had ever assembled. What's the latest intelligence from Hegemony Prime? Ben Harper's infiltration teams confirmed that the Coalition Council is meeting in emergency session. They know we're coming and they're desperate. Some members want to negotiate, others are calling for a scorched earth defense of the capital. Rachel had expected as much. The Coalition had lost over 60% of their territory in the past year. Their member species were openly fighting each other, their supply lines were in chaos, and their most secure facilities had been compromised by human infiltrators. But desperate enemies were often the most dangerous. Any word on civilian evacuation from the capital? Kate's expression darkened. They're refusing to evacuate. Coalition propaganda is claiming that surrendering Hegemony Prime would mean the destruction of galactic civilization. They're telling people that humanity plans to exterminate all non-human life. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment. The Coalition's final lie was also their most dangerous. If the people of Hegemony Prime believed they were fighting for survival, they would resist to the end. The liberation of the galactic capital could turn into a bloodbath that would stain humanity's victory forever. We need to prove them wrong, Rachel said. When we reach Hegemony Prime, our actions have to speak louder than their propaganda. The journey to the Coalition capital took 6 days. During that time, Rachel found herself meeting with representatives from dozens of species, all of them looking to her for guidance about what would come after the war. The Void Runners wanted guarantees that they could continue their nomadic lifestyle without interference. The Chirari were concerned about protecting their engineering techniques from exploitation. The Depths worried about maintaining control of their underwater territories. Everyone had fears about what humanity would become once they had power. History was full of liberators who became oppressors, revolutionaries who became tyrants. Rachel understood their concerns because she shared them. What if we're wrong about ourselves? She asked Kate during one of their private conversations. What if power does corrupt us? What if we become everything we fought against? Kate was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars rushing past the ship. Then our allies will stop us, she finally said. That's why we fight together instead of alone. That's why we share power instead of hoarding it. No single species should ever again have the kind of control the Coalition claimed. When the Liberation Front fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Hegemony Prime system, they found the Coalition's last stand waiting for them. Every surviving warship from all 12 member species had been gathered into a massive defensive formation around the capital world. The sight was both magnificent and terrible. Thousands of ships representing millions of years of technological advancement, all arrayed to fight to the death. They have numerical superiority, reported the fleet's tactical officer, a Chirari, named Clickwhistle, whose translated name never sounded quite right in human languages, but our ships have better technology and more experienced crews. Rachel studied the tactical display. The Coalition formation was designed around their traditional strengths, overwhelming firepower and impenetrable defenses. But it was also predictable, based on strategies that hadn't changed in centuries. Send a message to the Coalition fleet, Rachel ordered. Open channel, all frequencies. The communication went out across both fleets, ensuring that every ship on both sides could hear her words. Rachel knew that many of those ships contained soldiers who had never wanted this war, people who were fighting only because they had been told that humanity was a threat to their existence. This is President Rachel Cross of the Liberation Front, speaking to all beings in the hegemony system. We have come here today not as conquerors, but as liberators. We have come to end a war that should never have begun, to create a peace that can last for generations." She paused, knowing that her next words would determine whether the battle ahead would be a victory or a massacre. "To the coalition forces, I say this. Your leaders started this war by attacking innocent civilians. They continued it by oppressing dozens of species throughout the galaxy. They will end it by surrendering to justice, not to revenge. Any ship that stands down will be treated with honor. Any crew that surrenders will be protected. Any being that chooses peace over war will—" "Find it," the response came quickly. "This is High Admiral Kravex of the Coalition Defense Force. You speak of peace while commanding the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. You speak of liberation while allying with criminals and terrorists. Humanity has proven its true nature through 2 years of war crimes and sabotage. We will not surrender our civilization to barbarians." Rachel had expected that response, but it still hurt to hear. She thought of Alex Reed dying at New Eden, of Tom Walsh executed in a coalition prison, of Ben Harper losing his humanity to save his species. How many good people had died because of the coalition's arrogance and fear? "Then you have chosen your path," Rachel replied. "But know that when this battle is over, we will judge you by your actions, not your words, and we will rebuild this galaxy into something better than what you tried to preserve." The battle began with the coalition launching a massive coordinated assault, thousands of ships firing simultaneously in an attempt to overwhelm the Liberation Front's defenses. It was the kind of attack that had worked for them for centuries, brutal, direct, and devastating. But the Liberation Front didn't fight the way coalition strategists expected. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, they scattered into smaller formations that used speed and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the bombardment. Human ships equipped with improved alien technology struck at the coalition flanks, while Void Runner vessels slipped through their lines to attack command ships directly. The coalition formation began to break apart as individual species commanders started making decisions based on their own survival instead of the overall strategy. The Drac pulled back to protect their heavy cruisers. The Hive ships clustered together for mutual support. The Shard's crystalline vessels tried to maintain long-range bombardment positions. But the real turning point came when Maya Patel's computer viruses finally reached the Coalition's central command network. 2 years of evolution and adaptation had turned her simple sabotage programs into something approaching artificial intelligence. The virus began systematically shutting down coalition systems, turning their own weapons against them and broadcasting Liberation Front propaganda directly to their crews. Panic spread through the coalition fleet as ships lost control of their systems, found their weapons locked onto friendly targets, and received messages telling them that surrender was their only option for survival. Discipline broke down as individual captains made their own decisions about whether to continue fighting or save their crews. Admiral Kate Foster found herself in command of the tactical situation, while Rachel handled the political aspects of the battle. She watched coalition formations collapse into chaos and felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was the end of a war that had cost too much and lasted too long. Coalition flagship is requesting terms for surrender, her communications officer reported. Kate looked at Rachel, who nodded. Tell them we accept their surrender. All ships are to power down weapons and stand by for boarding parties. Medical assistance will be provided to any vessel that needs it. The formal surrender took place aboard the Coalition flagship, a massive vessel that had served as the mobile headquarters for their defense of the capital. Rachel found herself face-to-face with High Admiral Kravex, the Drac military leader who had coordinated the final battle. You have won, Kravex said, his reptilian features showing the exhaustion of defeat. But victory in battle is not the same as victory in war. Governing a galaxy is more difficult than conquering it. Rachel studied the alien admiral. Even in defeat, He was trying to plant seeds of doubt about humanity's ability to create something better than what the Coalition had built. "You're right," Rachel said. "Governing is harder than conquering. That's why we won't be doing it alone. The galaxy belongs to all of us, not just to humanity." Over the following weeks, the Liberation Front fleet worked to secure Hegemony Prime and begin the process of establishing a new galactic government. But Rachel's first priority was proving that humanity's victory would be different from the Coalition's ancient rule. She ordered medical ships to treat wounded Coalition soldiers, alongside Liberation Front casualties. She established refugee camps for displaced Coalition civilians and ensured they received the same supplies and protection as everyone else. Most importantly, she began organizing a constitutional convention where representatives from every species in the galaxy could help design a government based on cooperation instead of domination. The process wasn't easy. Centuries of mistrust and competition didn't disappear overnight. Some species wanted revenge against their former oppressors. Others worried about losing their cultural identity in a united galaxy. Many questioned whether different species could ever truly work together as equals. But slowly, carefully, with patience and determination, the foundation of a new galactic republic began to take shape. Not a human empire, but a genuine partnership where every species had a voice and every world had rights that couldn't be taken away by force. Rachel stood once again in an observation deck, looking out at Hegemony Prime. The planet was healing. From the war, its cities rebuilding, its people learning to live without fear. Ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through the system, carrying trade goods instead of weapons, ideas instead of threats. "Any regrets?" Kate asked, joining her at the window. Rachel thought about the question seriously. The war had cost millions of lives and changed the galaxy forever. Humanity had been forced to become something harder and more ruthless than they had ever wanted to be. The Coalition's ancient order was gone, and nobody knew for certain what would replace it. "No," Rachel said finally. "The galaxy started this war to keep things the way they were, but sometimes change is the only way to survive. We didn't choose to fight, but we chose how to win, and I think we chose correctly." Outside the window, a human transport ship docked alongside a Void Runner scout vessel, while a Chirari engineering team worked on repairs to a Coalition cruiser that had joined the New Republic. Different species working together, building something better than what any of them could create alone. The galaxy had started the war to destroy humanity's potential. Instead, they had helped humanity discover what that potential really was. Not the power to conquer, but the wisdom to unite. Not the strength to dominate, but the courage to liberate. Humanity had finished the war, but more importantly, they had finished it the right way.